Good morning, good afternoon. It's David Schlotthauer here with a tropical update on Tropical Storm Lee for September 6, 2023. As always, my thoughts in this video are mine alone, and making any decisions, please consult the National Hurricane Center and your local officials for the best information for where you're at. Now, taking a look at the latest true color visible satellite imagery provided by Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com, and we can see that Tropical Storm Lee has continued to gain latitude since yesterday and since the day before as it continues to move off towards the west-northwest at a pretty good speed of about, say, 14 to 15 miles an hour today. So the environment looks pretty ideal out ahead of this system. As you can see here, not much strong wind shear, no troughs out here to speak of. Very good, well-established outflow with the white feathery cirrus clouds that we're seeing well indicated here on the satellite imagery as Lee continues to move off in this general direction. Right now, it looks to miss the islands. We have a little bit better confidence today that it's not going to strike the islands at all. But this is still going to be a very, very dangerous hurricane on or near the islands by the time we go into the weekend. So looking at the latest meso floater satellite imagery, one of my favorite products that I like to see here on Tropical Storm Lee is that we are trying to get an inner core forming here. See the deep convection that is exploding here on the southern side and eastern side? We're trying to get that to wrap all the way around here. But fortunately for right now, we're seeing the shear that is fairly strong out of the northeast at over 30 knots at this moment, which is actually not 30 knots, but more like 20 knots, maybe 25. While it's not very strong now, I will prove you something in a second here on the water vapor imagery that proves my statement that we're seeing quite a bit of shear encroaching onto the northern side of the system, and despite this healthy outflow pattern that we are seeing these feathery white cirrus. So when we take a look at the water vapor imagery here from Dr. Levi Cowan's website, we can see that the system, there's a patch of dry air here, which we're not really worried about at all. This is not what's preventing the system from intensifying significantly at all. Instead, it is this patch of dry air and also this shear that is wrapping all the way around. This outflow, the return flow is hitting actually Lee in the face on the northeastern side of the system. So once this system moves further off towards the west-northwest, it should clear this belt of northeasterly flow. And once that occurs, I still think we're going to see explosive intensification really get going here in the next day or so. Here's a look at the latest NHC Advisory on this Wednesday with winds that are now nearing hurricane force. That is winds of 70 miles an hour, moving off towards the west-northwest at 14 miles an hour. And we are still expecting substantial strengthening with Lee as it continues to move in this general heading towards the west-northwest at about 10 to 15 miles an hour. Now, I want to make something clear here. Even so, the cone is not impacting any of the islands right now. There could still be some exceptionally high surf. We're talking waves that could reach 15 to 30 feet high across Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, the north-facing beaches, including the Virgin Islands, with some outer banding futures that could bring in some moderate to heavy rainfall at times and maybe a water spout or two. Even so, the center will safely miss the island. So I want to make that very clear in this video that just because the center doesn't make landfall, there will still be some minor impacts at least to some of the Virgin Islands as well as Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Now the cone is very far or pretty wide here in such a way that the track forecast air is more than about 200 to almost 250 miles at day 5, which means that even so the cone is not over Puerto Rico, there's still a chance that this could shift back a little bit. And also, there's still a chance that this could turn north soon enough where this could actually impact Bermuda. But what does this mean for the eastern U.S.? I will tell you much more when we look at our global computer models in just a little bit, since we have a lot to get through in today's video. But right now, major hurricane by Friday and even a stronger hurricane by the weekend into early next week. Here's a look at the latest reasonable time of tropical storm force winds and the probabilities. Still in all, okay, still keeping that 20 to 30% chance over the Virgin Islands, including for Puerto Rico. So again, for right now, I do have a little bit better confidence that this is going to likely miss the islands, the eye itself. But the tropical storm force winds could get very close to the island still. So that's why the chances here are still fairly elevated for the Virgin, including for Puerto Rico and now the Dominican Republic. And yes, the Bahamas here under a 5% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds. We also got to realize that this is going to be a very strong category 4 with a fairly wide wind field. So even so the center misses the islands, there could still be impacts, even towards the Bahamas. So here's a look at the key messages from the National Hurricane Center. Lee is forecast to become a major hurricane by early Saturday and could bring impacts to the northern Leeward Islands this weekend. While it is too soon to determine the location and magnitude of these possible impacts, interests in these areas should monitor the progress of Lee and further updates to the forecast. 2. Swells generated by Lee are expected to reach portions of the Lesser Antilles on Friday. These swells are likely to cause life-threatening surf and rip currents. So I want to make that clear. We're talking about some really, really big waves, crashing waves that could reach heights of about 15 to 30 feet at times, depending on where you're located geographically, the orientation of the beaches, the shelf, and everything like that. We could see some big surf out of this system, even so it doesn't hit the islands directly. So looking at the latest NHC Advisory, a lot of you all liked that I read this yesterday, so I'm going to do that in this morning's video, and we'll likely do that again in this afternoon's video. Today is the same deal, a double header, morning video now, and afternoon video released by about 3:30 or 4 o'clock this afternoon Pacific Daylight Time. So recent geostationary and microwave satellite imagery shows that the convective structure of Lee continues to improve. Visible satellite imagery shows a well-defined curve band of convection that wraps around the eastern portion of the circulation, and a couple of earlier microwave passes revealed a ragged mid-level eye that was open to the north. The low-level structure noted in the GMI microwave pass was quite organized with a well-defined low-level eye feature. The latest subjective Dvorak T-numbers from SAB and TAFB were about 55 knots, but given the continued increase in structure, the initial intensity has been raised to 60 knots. Lee is moving west-northwestward at about 12 knots to the south side of a low to mid-level ridge over the central Atlantic. The ridge is forecast to remain intact for the next several days, and a west-northwest motion at around the same forward speed is expected through the weekend. The track guidance continues to show that the core of Lee will pass to the north of the northern Leeward Islands. The core, okay, will pass to the north of the northern Leeward Islands. However, interests in these islands should continue to monitor the latest forecast as the typical 3 to 4 day track errors from the NHC are more than 125 miles, respectively. The new NHC forecast is again along the southern side of the guidance envelope between the faster and farther south HFIP corrected consensus model and the TVCA model consensus 8. So, despite the continued increase in organization, there appears to be some east-northeasterly shear over Lee, which we talked about at the beginning of the video. The shear is forecast to relax within the next 24 hours, and given the well-organized low-level structure of the cyclone, steady to rapid strengthening appears very likely as Lee transverses sea surface temperatures of 29 to 30 Celsius during the next few days. The NHC intensity forecast is similar to the previous advisory, bringing Lee to hurricane strength very soon and to a major hurricane within the next 48 hours. Continued strengthening seems likely after that time, but hard to predict. IWOL replacement cycles could cause some fluctuations in intensity later in the weekend and early next week. The NHC forecast is near the upper end of the guidance and calls for Lee to reach Category 4 intensity in about 2 or 3 days. So 2 days, this could be a Cat 4. That shows you how quick this will rapidly intensify once an inner core and eyewall closes off with Lee. So here's a look at the latest intensity guidance, and I want to be very clear about this, all right? Winds 70 now. It will be 85 miles an hour this afternoon. That's what we predict. In 24 hours, 100 miles an hour. 36 hours, 110. And then look at this. From a Category 2, Category 3, Category 4. So roughly in about a day between here and here, we're going to see a full 30 mile an hour jump in winds. And then now it levels off here because of possible eyewall replacement cycles. But I want to explicitly be clear here. Even so, the NHC is showing winds of around 150 miles an hour. This could go up. This could go down a little bit. This could be stronger given my forecast, and it won't be surprising with what all happens here in days to come. So therefore, when I show you the spaghetti plot, I'm a bit more bullish on my intensity, but still below Cat 5 status. I am not confident enough yet to call that Lee is going to become a Category 5 hurricane. Even so, other YouTube channels are showing or indicating that this will be a Cat 5 hurricane because they like to cause fear when it's really not necessary. So looking at the latest European model, we're going to do the same exact thing like we did yesterday. We're going to look at our globals first, and then we're going to make pit stops on the HWRF, HMON, HAVS A, and HAVS B models, as well as look at our spaghetti plots, because again, my job here is to provide as real, honest information as I can possibly get you all without hyping, fear-mongering, that sort of thing. So this look at the Euro, and this is for Thursday, September the 7th. There is Lee right there approaching with a nice look at the vorticity. Now, before we really get into things here, what you're looking at here is 3 different plots, okay? And I'm going to be very simple here, as easy to understand as I possibly can. So see these wind barbs here? Those are basically showing you what the winds are doing in the low levels. So I'm going to draw a few of them here, and I'm going to focus in so you all can see that. So these are wind barbs showing you the direction and intensity of the winds going around Lee. So take note that the winds are doing this, okay, and you can follow that. Now, these lines here indicate geopotential heights or thicknesses in the atmosphere. So basically, that's where our low-level ridge is right now. And then these colors indicate how much spin there is in the atmosphere. After all, the atmosphere is in fluid form, and so we're looking at how much cyclonic vorticity there is in the atmosphere. So I hope that clears things out really nicely. And that's what we'll be looking at as well on the GFS model. So out to day 4 we go. The Euro continues to explicitly call this to become a Cat 4 hurricane. That is a guarantee. That's what we're seeing here. But my goodness, look how strong this is. You can even see the red colors. It's straight to black, which indicates that the thicknesses, the ISO lines are so tightly packed that it's resembling like a black dot on the screen. And this is out to day 7, and showing you a very formidable, I mean for sure a major hurricane by all means of what? A Category 3, Category 4, it really won't matter. This is a big beast in the Atlantic, and you're going to get some gusty winds out of this if you're on the southeastern Bahama Islands, and then eventually very close to Bermuda. All right. We're going to go towards one more day here. This is out to, okay, no, here it is. This is out to day 8, and you can see I'm not going to go any further out than that, and some of you are probably like saying, dude, David, stop being a crybaby, go out to 10 days. I'm being very careful and generous here, and I really do not want to explicitly go out to 10 days and it shows something when in reality it's going to change a lot. This is the furthest out I'm going to go for the time being, and this shows a very powerful hurricane on the Euro. And in fact, if we go back and look, that's 918 millibars. That's very low in terms of pressure. 921 millibars here. So even the global computer models like the Euro are explicitly showing that this is going to become a very big deal. Probably very close to Cat 5 intensity. But again, my intensity doesn't explicitly show that. So looking now at the GFS model, this is a global forecasting system for the same kind of time range. We can see a very powerful hurricane with that vorticity, a pretty good stout looking mid-level and low-level ridge to the north of this. But given the overall met average here, or net average of steering flow, it's going to be generally off towards the west-northwest. So a miss to the islands seems extremely likely right now at the moment. But again, don't forget about those rain bands, and don't forget about the surf that you could be seeing out of this. And then this is going to be day 8 here at this moment, and we can see that this is really, really large. Even westerly winds all the way down here. So possibly expanding its wind field. Sorry if I hit the mic. We're going to see eyewall replacement cycles, which would likely allow that wind field to really expand. So even Bermuda here, if this passes very close, you can certainly get major hurricane force winds that are Category 3 or greater. So, and now when we look at the how strong this gets on the GFS model, it's actually less bullish than the Euro model, which really is quite rare to see. Usually the GFS is more bullish than anything else, showing pressures down to 936 millibars, lots of moisture out of this, with pressures that remain at around 940, 945 millibars, all the way out through the next 7 days or so, maybe 8 days. So this is going to be a very big menacing problem that we will have to watch for days to come. A big ACE producing type system. So now looking at our hurricane models now, okay, the H-WRF first, then the H-MON, then the HAVS A and B runs, because this is the more bullish side of the forecast intensity model. Okay, and then I want to show something interesting for you all towards the end of these model runs. So looking out to now this evening, possibly a hurricane here. You can see the purple here, which denotes the potential for hurricane force winds. Certainly tropical storm force winds on this, going all the way out to tomorrow morning. Still a pretty formidable hurricane here with winds, again, at around 75 miles an hour. Going out to now tomorrow afternoon for Thursday, September the 7th, yeah, we can see an inner core structure forming here, and this would become a Category 2 hurricane. Once we get that inner core, that eye wall to the north is able to close off, we could see some explosive intensification for sure. There is all potential pointing towards that happening, but it's all about when that eye wall to the north closes. If it's sooner than later than what this model is showing, then this could end up being even stronger than what models are indicating. By the time we go out to Friday morning and Friday afternoon, yeah, this is the 936 millibar system with winds that could get awfully close to Cat 5 intensity on the H-WRF. But again, this is fairly conservative versus the other models that I'm about to show you. This only keeps it at 944 millibars, which is probably an understatement given that the Euro and the GFS are stronger than the H-WRF model in itself as far as central pressure goes. And this goes out to day 5. Now I want to make something clear. See this right here? This is within reach of the islands. no, tropical storm force winds are not going to impact the islands directly, but also you're going to get some pretty high surf and some rain bands that could orbit out from the center of the tropical storm or hurricane at this moment. So therefore, there will be impacts, just not catastrophic, but instead more minor impacts are anticipated. But videos will continue to be released on this system as long as it remains a threat to these islands, including for Bermuda or the U.S. mainland of the eastern seaboard. Now, the HMON model is a little bit more bullish than the other ones, but takes a little bit longer for inner core structure to get going. As you can see here, hurricane force winds with winds that are right around 75 miles an hour. When we go forward in time by Friday afternoon, that's when we really get an inner core structure. That's what most of the guidance indicates with a 934 millibar system. Very low, to say the least, with winds that could support winds of about 140, 145 miles an hour. By Saturday morning, probably about 150 miles an hour. So that's what the NHC shows in their forecast within 3 to 4 days, that will likely be the case. And then going forward here, possibly on this model, a Category 5 hurricane. Now, I want to be clear here that the NHC is very generous, and I'm going to stay generous too. Even so, the models have been consistently calling for a Cat 5. We're not calling it in today's video with my official forecast. I'm going to keep this fairly generous, but just note that adjustments upward to intensity are still probable in later updates. There's a look at the wind field, 927 millibars on the HMON, and then it still remains a very intense hurricane. Look at this, 920 millibars now. Not as strong as last model run, but of course this is the intermediate run, and we will have to wait for more model runs to come out for later updates. But still, this is very intense, not a Cat 5 on at this given time, but again, it really won't matter at this point. 920, 922 certainly supports a Category 4 hurricane for sure. And then if an eyewall replacement cycle completes, this can resume intensifying once again by the end of the 5-day forecast. Now, looking at the HAFS A model, so now this is kind of the brother and sister here, the sister being the A and the brother being the B, which makes sense because B stands for brother. Going forward, this also takes its own sweet time to get an inner core structure to take shape here, so it's going to be interesting to see how strong this will get between now and tomorrow. If this is stronger than the HAFS A run or the B, and it's outperforming most of the intensity, who knows how strong this could actually get. But you can see here on this model, no inner core structure has formed yet, and it won't be until Friday morning when we do get a more better defined inner core with 963 millibars with winds that support major hurricane intensity by Friday afternoon. By Saturday morning, definitely a major hurricane by all means. That's what most of the models indicate that we've talked about. And then look at this. Winds that reach 153 knots. Very, very significant here with pressures down to 923 millibars. So certainly a Category 5 at this point. And then remaining that intense through the forecast, possibly fluctuating between about 155 to 175 miles an hour with pressures that look to drop to as low as 908. Now, I'm going to take a quick brief look at the latest, or the 0Z run, because this one was very concerning yesterday. When we look at that run, okay, towards the end here, actually, wait, was it the 18Z run? Or no, it was the HAFS B run that I want to show you all, because that's the more bullish one. Take a look at this. So by tomorrow, okay, by Thursday afternoon, it thinks that an inner core structure will exist. That's what we see here. And then going forward by Friday afternoon, possibly a strong Category 3 or 4 hurricane. And then look at this. Look at that inner core, 908 millibars. Now down to 901 millibars with winds that could reach 160 knots. That's a very bullish run. And notice where the islands here are on the map. So again, missing the island safely, but wow, very intense. So if you're doing any boating, fishing, or anything, just be aware of that this is very, very intense. And then once again, once it completes that ERC, it could resume intensifying as remaining a Category 5 hurricane or weaker, of course. Now, that's not the only bullish run. Let's take a look at the 0Z run. That was the most bullish that I have ever seen. 904 millibars with 160 knot winds and possibly getting 170 knot winds at the surface with pressures down to 902 millibars. So there is a ceiling on this, a high one, for pressures that could be as low as this. But again, not very likely to occur, but wow. I mean, the TAFB has been really, really consistent at showing pressures right around 900 millibars to 906, 907, which would more likely support an intensity stronger than Hurricane Dorian back in 2019. So looking at the TAFB now, showing you the simulated satellite look here, you can see that a very well-defined eye shows up, very small indeed, until an eyewall replacement cycle completes, and then you see a more better defined eye. But notice the islands are right here. I know they're hard to see and make out on the screen, but misses with plenty of distance, but still, you can get some of these feeder bands that move through, that bring in some inclement weather, maybe some heavy rainfall, maybe some breezy winds, that sort of thing. But right now, we're not seeing the catastrophic impacts like we were thinking like yesterday or the day before. But still, this could still shift further off towards the west. Okay, so now looking at the 12Z output of the spaghetti plot, and this is provided by, I don't know what it's provided by, but either way, you can see the spaghetti plot here over the next 5 days. All of these models do miss the islands, with the NHC also right within line of most of the model guidance. When we take a look here at the model intensity for Lee, this is the very important one. Everyone's wondering, how intense do I bring this system to? Once again, I am the red line, and so follow along in your in the video so you all can see this. So this is my intensity forecast. All right, and so right now I am a little bit higher than the NHC, but right on par with what their forecast calls for. All right, and you can see it right here. I am right now right under Category 5 intensity, with winds at peak at about 150 to 155 miles an hour in that sort of books and range. So while other YouTubers are going to say this is going to become a Cat 5, I am not confident. There's not enough evidence to prove right now that this is going to become a Cat 5 hurricane. But it won't really matter. 160, 155, 5-mile difference, it's not going to matter a whole lot, because if this was ordered to hit land, this would really be devastating. So the super blend here that I like looking at, I'm going to zoom this all in, by the way, so you can see here what all the models do indicate. There's a decent spread on the super blend. This is the Euro in green, by the way. This is the GFS in, oh wait, no, the Euro is in red, my bad. The Euro's in red, Euro is on the right side of that, and then the ensemble mean is off towards the left. So there's a lot of wiggle room here in such a way that this could still hit the Bahamas, or this could hit Bermuda instead. Just showing you the possible outcomes here. So that is why I'm very careful now. I'm more careful than ever to not show any impacts yet to the eastern seaboard of the U.S., because we just don't know yet on who is going to get impacted by this and how close this is going to get to shore. It's all about the timing with these systems, with the trough in the eastern U.S. and the ridge off towards the east of that. So how strong could Lee get? What's the potential intensity? Right now, still calling this to be maximum, the maximum potential of right around 155 knots to 170 knots, with shear generally under 15 knots or so. Sea surface temperature is very favorable, right around 29 to 30 Celsius. And then upper ocean heat content is very favorable for the system. Now, just to review with what we talked about here, let me go to the Central Atlantic basin here so you all can see that. Oops, all these frames decide to load. So now that we talked about this, as far as who's going to get impacted by this. Right now, the islands do not look to be in an imminent threat by this system, and this is likely to miss the islands with safe distance. But what about the Bahamas? What about Bermuda? What about the eastern seaboard? You might want to stay tuned to future videos on my channel for latest updates on that, because I will have another update this afternoon, as I'm strongly confident that Lee will be a hurricane. So therefore, we will have another video released on this channel by about 3:30 or so. Make sure you mark your calendar, turn on your notifications for latest updates. Share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you back here this afternoon at 3:30 or 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time.